I'm 78 years old, and there's a sentence that has been sitting in my chest for years now. I loved people in the wrong order. I didn't realize it at the time, of course I didn't. Nobody wakes up in the morning and decides they're going to arrange their life badly. At the time, every choice I made felt sensible, responsible, even honorable. But when you sit where I'm sitting now, with more past than future, the order of things becomes very clear. And sometimes that clarity arrives far too late.
I had work to do, bills to pay, people depending on me. And when you're busy surviving, you don't spend much time asking questions about who you really are. You just keep moving. Now that I'm older, now that the house is quiet most days, that feeling has come back. Only this time, I finally understand it. And the strange thing is, nothing terrible caused it. My life from the outside looked fine, maybe even successful. But I'll get to that. These days, I wake up early. Old habit. I sit in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and watch the light slowly come through the window. The mornings are the clearest time for thinking. No noise, no expectations, just time. And when you reach this age, time feels different. You start measuring what's left, whether you mean to or not. You remember more than you plan. That's when I started replaying things. Moments from my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. Not the big milestones people talk about, the smaller ones. Conversations, decisions that seemed ordinary at the time. And I began noticing something that had been there all along. I was always trying to be the version of myself that made sense to other people, not the one that felt natural to me. But back then, I didn't know the difference. When I was young, I believed something simple, that life had a correct path. You pick a direction, you commit, you work hard, and eventually things feel right. I grew up in a house where responsibility came before everything else. My father worked long hours. My mother believed stability was the highest form of love you could offer a family. No one talked about dreams or identity. You did what needed to be done. And I followed that idea without question. In my early 20s, I took a job at a logistics company. It wasn't exciting, but it paid regularly. I told myself that was enough. I remember the building clearly. Fluorescent lights, gray cubicles, the low hum of printers running all day. At first, I felt proud. I had a desk, a steady paycheck, people who called me reliable. That word meant something back then. Reliable. It felt like proof I was doing adulthood correctly. A few years later, I got promoted. Then another promotion. My responsibilities grew. So did the hours. But the strange thing is, the more stable my life became, the more that quiet feeling inside me returned. It would show up at odd moments, driving home late at night, sitting in meetings where everyone spoke in the same careful language, or standing in the bathroom mirror before work. Just a brief thought. Is this really me? But I always brushed it away. Everyone feels uncertain sometimes. That's what I told myself. And life kept moving. I got married when I was 30. Her name was Claire. She was patient in ways I didn't fully appreciate at the time. Claire had this ability to notice small things about people. If someone felt uncomfortable in a room, she knew immediately. If someone needed encouragement, she was already offering it before they asked. She once told me something I didn't understand back then. We were sitting on the couch after dinner. The television was on, but neither of us was really watching. She looked at me and said quietly, "You spend a lot of time pretending you're someone else." I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what she meant. "I'm just working," I told her. "That's what people do." She nodded, but there was a sadness in her face that stayed with me longer than the conversation. Years passed. We had a daughter. Life became busier. Work demanded more of me. The company was expanding, and I was part of the management team by then. Long hours became normal. Weekends weren't always guaranteed. I told myself I was doing it for the family, for stability, for the future. That word future carried a lot of weight in those days. I missed small things, not the kind people usually remember. I was there for birthdays, school graduations, but there were other moments, the ordinary ones. My daughter once asked me if I could help her build something for a science project, a small model bridge. I remember telling her I'd do it after I finished some paperwork. The paperwork took longer than I expected. By the time I came downstairs, she had already built it with Claire. It sat on the kitchen table. Simple, crooked in places, but finished. She smiled when I saw it. Kids are good at pretending they're not disappointed. Another time, Claire asked me if I could come with her to visit her sister. It was a short trip, just a day, but I had a deadline at work. I told her we'd go next time. There's always a next time when you're younger, or at least you believe there is. The years kept stacking on top of each other. 40 came and went, then 50. My career was stable. People respected me. I had the kind of life my parents would have been proud of. But every now and then, that old feeling returned. The one I used to ignore. Standing in my office after everyone else had gone home. Looking out at the parking lot. Asking myself quietly, why does this feel like someone else's life? Not in a tragic way, just distant. Like I had stepped into a role years ago and kept playing it because stopping would confuse everyone. Claire noticed before I did. Of course she did. She always noticed things first. One night she said something that stayed with me. I missed the person you were before you became who everyone expects. I didn't know how to answer because I couldn't remember who that person was anymore. Life went on. Our daughter moved out, started her own life. The house became quieter. Claire and I talked about traveling, about slowing down. But work still had my grip on me. Retirement was always something I planned to think about later. Then, Claire got sick. It wasn't sudden. At first, it was just fatigue. Then doctor visits. Then more tests. You tell yourself it will be manageable, treatable. People survive these things all the time. But life doesn't always follow those assumptions. The year she got diagnosed changed everything. Hospital rooms have a way of making time feel heavy. You sit there listening to machines and realize how small your priorities used to be. Claire was calm through most of it, calmer than I was. One afternoon, when the room was quiet, she looked at me the same way she had years ago on the couch. She asked me, "You know what makes me sad?" I told her no. "You spent so much of your life pretending to be the man people expected. You never gave yourself permission to be the man you actually were." I didn't respond right away, because suddenly, I understood what she meant. All those years, the promotions, the responsibilities, the version of myself I had carefully maintained, none of it came from inside me. It came from fear. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of instability. Fear of not being seen as responsible. I had built a life that made sense to everyone, except me. Claire passed away the following winter, quietly, in the early morning hours. The house felt different after that. Not just empty, but honest in a way that it had never been before. There were no more roles to perform. No one expecting me to keep things running. Just silence. That's when the memories started arriving more clearly. Not the big regrets people talk about. I didn't ruin my life. I didn't lose everything. But I realized something heavier than that. I had spent decades living slightly disconnected from myself, like a guest in my own life. I did what was expected. I showed up where I was supposed to. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking whether it felt true. And once you stop asking that question, years can pass before you notice. At 69, I finally understand why that quiet discomfort followed me everywhere. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't depression. It was something simpler. I wasn't living as myself. I was living as a version of myself that felt acceptable, reliable, predictable, safe. There's nothing wrong with responsibility, nothing wrong with stability. But if you lose yourself while building those things, the cost is difficult to see until much later. These days, I walk a lot, slow walks through the neighborhood. Sometimes people recognize me from my old job. They ask me how retirement is treating me. I tell them it's peaceful, and it is. But peace has a strange companion, clarity. When you finally stop moving so fast, you begin to see the shape of your life more honestly. And sometimes that honesty is heavy. There are things I wish I had done differently, conversations I wish I had taken more seriously,
Moments I wish I had stayed present for instead of thinking about work. But time doesn't reopen those doors. That's the quiet rule of life no one explains when you're young. You don't get to redo the ordinary days. Those are the ones that disappear first. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I will share one thing I wish someone had told me when I was 30. It's possible to build a life that looks right from the outside and still feel like a stranger inside it. That feeling doesn't always mean something is broken. Sometimes it means something inside you is waiting to be heard. Don't ignore it for 40 years the way I did. Not because you'll ruin your life, but because you might spend too much of it playing a role that was never really yours. And if this story meant something to you, you're welcome to share your thoughts. I read them sometimes. It reminds me that even strangers can recognize pieces of themselves in another person's life. As for me, I'm 69 now. The mornings are quiet. The coffee is still warm. And for the first time in a long while, I'm beginning to feel like I know the man sitting at this kitchen table. I just wish I had met him sooner.